CES 2023 is in the books. What was cool? What got our attention? And does it all matter? Stay tuned and we'll tell you. Welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. CES 2023, one of the world's largest technology trade shows, concluded over the weekend in Las Vegas. According to show organizers, more than 115,000 people attended the event, which is up significantly from the last two pandemic-related show years. Joining me to talk about this show is my old friend Matt Hamblin. He's a senior editor at Fierce Electronics, and he covers automotive technologies as well as other kind of technologies. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Matt,
it's good to see you again. You used to be an editor here at Computer World as well, right?
Yes. 21 years.
Yeah, and so, how many years have you been going to CES? Do you count now?
I think I counted up 14.
Yeah.
So it's kind of staggering. But quite a few changes this year, and especially the fact that we're back to the in person, but they backed it up with a lot of online stuff, so that was kind of convenient.
And did you go during the two pandemic years as well, or were you virtual for those two, or I think they canceled?
I was virtual. They came back last year.
Okay.
And then my last one was 2020, and that was like right before there was a global pandemic. March of 2020. So.
Right. Now, they said that there was 115,000 people this year. Did you get a sense that it was more crowded than in the years before the pandemic? Because I think they had a high of 200,000 or something like that, right?
Yeah, 190. I think 190 was like 2019 maybe. This was less crowded. The big change for me was the West Hall of the Las Vegas Convention Center was open. It was open last year, but that made, more space, and the buses that came around the backside of that added to places where you could get on and off buses. I don't think the lines for the buses were nearly as long. And, they had the monorail, and then they had the boring tunnel, Tesla boring tunnel. It was just a demo, but it let you go from one end of the convention center to the other, and that was kind of actually helpful.
Interesting.
So there were a lot of changes.
Yeah. Now, did you have meetings on the floor, or were you one of those guys that has to go around to different hotel rooms and do meetings there?
Both. I did both. I really just stuck with the West Hall, and I was really only there that one full day on Thursday.
Okay.
I did all the prior media days, 2 days. So 3 days total, which was plenty. I mean, I learned not to try to change venues in the middle of the day. That I learned that about 10 years ago.
Yeah, that comes with experience. You start planning. You do a lot more planning after you've been to the show a couple of years, because the walking back and forth that gets old really quick. Let's talk about some of the automotive technology that you saw at the show. The CES has always been about autonomous vehicles, and there would be demos set up for driving or riding a car without a driver, and that's probably been going on for 5 to 10 years now. Obviously, are you covering that? But then, are you covering other types of automotive advances?
Yeah, both. I am, and I did a ride test with a car from Qualcomm. They're using Snapdragon as the brand for their ride platform. I did that. I could have done more than that, but you do have to go off-site to some of these to do those.
Yeah,
it takes more time. You don't drive them, but you can see them. They're doing electric, and they're doing a lot of autonomous capabilities. I mean, it turns out that Caterpillar's been doing almost autonomous mining trucks for 10 years.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, they
don't have to go out on a highway where they're going to get cut off by a teenager or something. So it's a little different. But there were some innovations around that. I mean, I'm interested in automation, and the industrial part of it is fine, but there were a lot of fascinating concept cars that'll be coming. I'm going to write a longer piece on the cellular V2X, which might not really happen. I mean, some people don't think it will, but boy, Qualcomm's really pushing it hard. So
yeah. Well, do you think the concept cars that get shown at the show are trying to convince people that this is where cars are going, or the automotive industry? I know that with the autonomy and this whole idea of the self-driving car, it's supposed to be about, well, the car experience, whether you're commuting or whether you're taking a longer trip, it'll become more like a hotel on wheels, and you'll be able to watch a movie, and you're going to be able to do some other types of things. Is that just to try to convince people of how cool it will be when this happens, or is it more of a, since we don't need a steering wheel, let's just replace it with something else? Or are we going to see sort of hybrids coming up between, like, it will have a steering wheel if you need to drive it, but then for the other things you won't?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think CES and maybe other shows, but especially them, the concept idea is, as a reporter, you never know, well, wait a minute, is this real? Is this happening in 5 years? I mean, I think that's your point. And you don't know. I mean, I went to see, for example, let's take the one that got a lot of publicity, which was the BMW car, the sort of companion car. They showed, it's really amazing technology. They take e-ink and they put it on the skin of the car in like 200 different locations so that it can become an all-white car, or a checkered black and white car, or blue and with a racing stripe down the middle. And I met with the lady who invented it, and she was just a great interview. She talked about it. She said, "Yeah, this is not durable material. I mean, they created the e-ink between two layers, and they plastered it on a car, and it looks very smooth. It's not. They did a nice job. But I mean, just that's one small piece of what they said with that car, and so you always go, well, yeah, is anybody going to really build it and use it?
Right.
And I mean,
that was well, the cynical side of me goes, well, yeah, that would be interesting, but then why would I need it? Or if I want it, and then it goes in the New England winter, is snow and rain and dirt going to get all over it? Like, that just doesn't seem practical to me. And then it dawns on me that this is a concept.
Yeah, and I think everybody's definition of a concept is different. I mean, like there was a Dodge Charger concept, and the lady that was kind of hidden away, and it looks a little bit like today's Charger, but I couldn't even touch it. I tapped it, and she told me, "Don't do that." It's like I'm going, okay, it's going to collapse if I touch it. So I think what car makers are doing is they're saying, yeah, we can have a lot of things in these cars, and it's going to be really a lot more cogitation before they get to a final thing. Like they can show you that they're running chips inside that allow you to network the inside of the vehicle, or even talk to the cellular system, that sort of thing. I think it really is a show that tries to get people thinking. I mean, I think, right. And you also have to remember, this is not really the consumer going to these shows. They're design engineers, and they walk around and they go, "Oh, that looks practical," or "That's cool." I mean, so if you're not at that level of, if you're not at that creative level, it might not be a valuable thing for you. It's certainly not a gun show. Or you pick it up and try it.
Right, and it's not like the auto shows either. I think the big Detroit Auto Show is in a couple of weeks or next week or something. And then you start seeing it's just cars. So obviously you have an audience that is interested in that. Cars in general at CES tend to be either in one hall or the other, and you've got so many other companies that are out there that it makes you wonder too. I want to ask about the robot, the autonomy robot, OTTONOMY. I've heard of these guys. They were putting up mobile robots in airports, and they were delivering food to a couple of different airports. I know that Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, they are piloting programs there. They came out with one with a partnership with Yeti, and I think Yeti's on my computer here on the back. So they had a kind of a new concept as well in terms of unattended deliveries, and you wrote about this on your site, right?
Yeah, they do, and it was a very interesting idea. The reason that company is so interesting is that they're a startup from just a couple of years ago, and they claim they've grown quite a fast rate. Instead of 2 airports, they say they have 14. Okay, they're really small at this point, but a lot of big companies have pulled out of the delivery robots. I mean, it just isn't the main thing that they focus on. And he said, that's why we're successful.
Is because
So
that's all they do.
see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is this means they can take a robot that drives up to a porch and literally opens and something and slides out a package. So that's what they mean there, as opposed to, say, on a college campus where I live, you can see these robots Starfleet running all over the place, and kids have to go up and students, sorry, they have to go up and use their phone to open it,
Right.
and then verify that they're there. But this one is like, just like the UPS guy. I mean, he comes to my door now, and he doesn't even ring the bell, and he just drops it. I mean, that's the sense that they have. I mean, I'm kind of following them because it's a fascinating example of how a startup works. And they have all these really hardworking engineers, and maybe they'll be bought by somebody, and maybe they'll go somewhere. But they're trying to figure out the examples of where you can do it. I mean, you can't drive one of these on a public road, so that's kind of hard or you have to get permission to do that.
Right.
So,
right. When you walk around covering this types of mobility and automotive type technology, do you look at something at the show and go, wow, that's a really cool idea, or that I've never thought of that before? Or, having been there for 17 years now, do you get jaded by it? Do you get like, oh God, this
no.
again, or anything like that?
I mean, yeah, you get jaded by trusting people saying it can really do this or that. And one of the hardest things is you don't know how much something costs, and you're going like, well, if it's an astronomical price, it's not going anywhere in the market. And,
Yeah.
I mean, but I mean, I think you want to be a realist, but also you don't want to just put a damper on everything they're trying to do. I mean, this is the tech world we're in. I mean, if Apple didn't really have certain ideas, what would they have come up with?
Right. Right.
Same with Facebook and Metaverse. I mean, I'm always careful not to sort of put a kibosh on anything and I'm not an opinion writer. I'm a so-called objective reporter. So
all right. So just take the objectivity hat off for a second, or not your real hat, but the objectivity hat.
Really ahead of it.
What was there anything that you did, that you were excited about at CES 2023?
Well, I like the BMW concept car.
Okay.
I seriously did. I think the big idea, and I'll just keep on that example. I did like it just because they're talking about the companion to a person, and they're feeding into this one person, one car mentality that the transit people in the world hate, which is that, I got this really cool thing that reflects my personality and understands me. And so they're talking, they kind of compared it to Herbie, remember the little Volkswagen or the kid from Dark Knight. I mean, they use those examples.
Right.
When I thought, okay, that's kind of silly, but what they're really after is what BMW has been after, which is, this is a really cool car. I remember in college, everybody wanted an old BMW that, were still pretty expensive, but so that's they've really taken this marketing to the next level. Another really practical thing I saw was, for example, Deere had this exact shot of capability where they're now, I mean, it's unbelievable. They had this robot working. It's really not a robot. It's just a fixed object that goes at the bottom of a planter, which is a huge machine out in a field.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of every seed that's being planted in the spring getting a spray of fertilizer on top of it, it would plant at a super fast rate, like 30 seeds a second or something that fast, really fast. 30, maybe I have that wrong, but then they would they timed it so they have a sensor and a robot that shoots just a little tiny amount of fertilizer on that exact seed. And they're saying that this reduces the fertilizer needed by 60%. I mean, it's a brand new thing. Whether it's used and bought and used is a different matter. But I mean, that's kind of incredible. And, if you care about food production and fertilizing, and I mean, that's really serious stuff because, they're not the only ones. There's other people that are worried about the food supply.
Right. Yeah, there's all these projections about what the food supply will need to be in 2050. And it's pretty staggering. That's why you have to optimize a lot of your agriculture and your technology to do that. All right, switching gears for just a second. The next topic I want to talk about is more of an overall view of your opinion on CES. Does CES still matter for those of us who enjoy technology, for those of us who cover the world of business tech. In this day and age where you've got instant information and social media and all these other things, and companies doing their own private events like Apple or Microsoft, things like that, does CES, is it still relevant in today's world, or is it kind of a bygone era from like maybe the last 20 years ago when that was really big in the 2000s and then 2010s?
No, I think it still matters. I think the next few years will tell. I know the events industry has just been wringing its hands for 3 years with pandemic. They are going to, I work at a company that does events. And the idea of using virtual to supplement in person is, I think, just really great, and I think that's going to be used widely going down the road. It was great in my example. So what you do when you write a story now is you go and you meet the guy, and sometimes like the exact shot, that the person standing there, a woman, was very instrumental in creating that machine, and so she really knows it. And the woman that created the e-ink for the car, she just for 2 minutes really talked to me about how hard it was to make that thing work.
Yeah.
So you don't get that very often from big companies, because they're not going to go find their engineer and put them on the phone with you. It's going to be the marketing guy or the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, and I think the head of CTA talked about this. He said this is like the 5-cent experience. I don't think that's a good description, but it's like that sort of quick serendipity kind of thing.
Yeah.
I almost got, and then, they have really great conference sessions. You can tune into stuff like that online all the time, but when you're in the audience and your reaction sort of matters. You and I love live theater, and I think that's kind of what's going on here is like, are we just, we're not going to create a metaverse where we don't have those connections. Even just the smells and the humidity and all of that stuff, just really changes your whole perspective. You are really there, and that's gonna.
Yeah, there are pros and cons that I keep thinking about, like the pros of like you're exactly right. The idea of being there in person and seeing something and either touching a product or seeing how it looks and seeing how it operates. You can get most of that from video, but there is something to be said about maybe meeting the right people there and also getting a big picture of overall. You can walk around on the floors and you can see where the crowds are. And when you see the crowds and what they're excited about, then you're like, okay, well, this is a topic area. The other thing I like about the show is because it's so big and expansive, it's not just a single product. Like, there's robots in one section, there's drones in another section. You can go and do all of the TV stuff. There's all the cars. So from a journalism perspective, it's hard to get the overall view of the show unless you're there. Or unless you're just reading tons and tons and tons of articles. Like even, our colleagues over at PC World, most of their articles were all about, PCs and new laptops and monitors and the gaming rigs and things like that. Whereas some of the robot sites were talking about the new LiDARs that are coming out for automotives and some of the new robots. There's this dual-armed mobile robot that can do different tasks, and that's like pretty amazing considering what else is going on. So, but on the other hand, the expense and the hassle of traveling and going to Vegas and being in a sea of 100,000 plus people, that weighs down on you as well. And especially if you then end up seeing something like the bird feeder that has a camera on it, so that it takes a picture of the bird that's eating your bird feed. And it's like, okay, I came all the way to see this. And like the gadgety part of it, I used to be really excited about, but I think as I've gotten older, I get less excited about the hyped gadget type stuff. And I want more practical things. But that's, so what do I do from a tech enthusiast standpoint?
Yeah, I love your insight. The serendipity part of it is always amazing to me. I can set up all these meetings and talk, the expert on LiDAR or whatever it is, which I did. But I just was one example. I'm walking through West Hall and there's a huge crowd in front of a huge booth. and it's the VinFast CEO. This woman, she speaks almost perfect English. Boy, is she a good public speaker. And they shipped 1,000 cars from Vietnam here to electric vehicles. They look really good, and they had several of them on the floor there. This is a huge throng. These are analyst types that want to see where this is going to go. Their second time in CES. I mean, the U.S. car companies must be just scared because they're coming out with, electric vehicles, but, are they working fast enough on the rest of it? I mean, so that's a kind of perception. It's just it's not a complete story, but
Yeah.
it makes you really think about, wow, what's happening? So I covered a lot of the battery stuff. I covered a lot of the, the chemical capabilities of batteries. People are talking about solid state a lot.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that, we haven't gotten into and don't have time for, but that's, and I certainly heard AMD talking about all the chips that are going to go in the gaming devices. And I'm going, well, you kind of hope that AMD does stay up there on the front line, but, that just wasn't something that became a story for me.
Right. Is CES still your favorite show to go to if you had to kind of rank them, or do you have other shows that you prefer?
Yeah, lately, well, I always used to love Mobile World Congress, but I was more of a wireless guy then. So that was the best show. And,
Okay.
And you know what? It wasn't because of Barcelona, which is really great venue, but it was because of the size of it and because of the capability. And the city of Barcelona just went out of its way to make sure it was a good event. And I'd say that I always had best memories of that. And it was, it was cold there in those days. It wasn't like it was going to the beach or something. I can't really say. CTIA shows from years ago were great. So I don't know if I'd know a better one. CES. A lot of people don't want to go to Vegas, and it's just because Vegas is hard. I mean, it's difficult to get around.
Right.
But that and other reasons, but and maybe expensive.
What about automotive tech shows? Do they have a bunch of are there a bunch of those that either you've gone to that you liked, or is it just a random city?
Well, I used to go to the Chicago one all the time. I mean, I just would go. I'm not. This is. I mean, I've been covering this for 3 years. It's not like I've been covering it forever, so that's why I don't know about all the shows. I would say that when you think about all the newer Guy Fisker. I mean, I interviewed the CEO of Fisker because just because of a show that he did. So he's. I mean, you can tell which companies have the strongest CEOs, or the old line car companies, just like old line anything. I mean, they're going to spread out the offerings of products that they have as wide as they can, and so maybe they're not the most innovative around electric vehicles or about like setting the price. The $35,000 electric vehicle. I mean, that's really kind of a vision still.
Yeah.
So that. So. Yeah, I don't have a problem with people doing their own show. Like Apple always gets away with it, but that really does create just a really concentrated message. And the people who cover Apple are, they're top reporters. I mean, and they ask good questions, and they know what's, you got a great M2 processor. I mean, that they know what that means.
Yeah, I guess what I'm wondering about is for our BizTech audience, the ones that really get into kind of the IT and the technology side of things, should they pay attention to the stuff that comes out of CES? Not because of any. I mean, it's probably because they're interested in it for themselves, rather than any technology that might be coming into the office or into the workplace. So that's kind of why I was wondering about whether this still matters, or if people should just pay attention for the first couple of weeks in January and then go back to their other jobs at that point.
I think CES is way beyond just being consumer. So that's why I went. I wouldn't have gone if it was just about consumer.
Right. And obviously, the computer companies are there. And like, I think Lenovo did a dual screen laptop that looked interesting, so that if you were working at home, you could have sort of dual screens without having to get a separate monitor and hook that in. And I always thought that was interesting from the new hybrid work kind of style that's coming out. So there's a lot of articles that are out there of really neat stuff, depending on what you're interested in. So I would suggest that if you are into a certain niche of technology, you look up, your favorite kind of site to go look at. And if they sent someone to CES or wrote about CES, there's probably a ton of news announcements from that show. That's the beauty of a big show. And I hope it doesn't go away. I hope that CES continues and that they get stronger again, because there is still a place to get that overall big picture view of where technology is headed. Matt, any final thoughts from you about the show? Are you rested? Did you get did you see a lot of people wearing masks, or did you get the CES cough?
Not very many masks.
No,
and
okay.
I wore my mask almost 95% of the time. So, this part of me you don't see. I mean. It's okay. Because everybody's got different health things. I mean, everybody was respectful that I did, and I was respectful that they didn't. And I think except for all of the raging numbers in China, I think people kind of feel like we're getting over it. But
right,
you just don't know.
Yeah, I was starting to sense that last year as well at some of the shows that I was attending. All right, it's always great to see you, Matt. Thanks again for joining us on the show today.
Bet.
All right, and that's all the time we've got for today's show. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and every week we'll bring you new technology, analysis, and opinion. Thanks again. I'm Keith Shaw. Bye.